Creative Baddies. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the show. I'm so excited that you're here. Today, we are going to be unpacking another really common buzzword in the world of art and creativity. And this time, it's experimentation. What does it mean? What does it look like in practice? If you're ready to dive in, then keep listening or watching if you're on YouTube. And let's kick off this exploration by talking about why experimenting sounds good in theory, but it can be much more harder in practice. First of all, we don't know how. We don't know what it means to experiment in practical terms. This is one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around in creative spaces. Experiment this, experiment that. But how do you do it? What does this mean within the context of your particular flavor of creativity? And when do you know that you've experimented enough? And when should you stop experimenting? When should you finally commit to your creative idea or your project? I think there's too many questions and not enough answers. The second thing is we are afraid of failure because let's be real here, failure and rejection sucks. It doesn't feel good. It can feel painful and embarrassing when things don't work out. So we try to avoid it at all costs. For example, I went through this last year when I joined forces with a colleague to launch a podcast very similar to this. And you can tell that I've been thinking about podcasting for a while. And once a project kicked off, I quickly realized that it wasn't going to work out for me long term. And I had to admit to not only myself, but also my collaborator, that this wasn't going to work. I had to call it quits. And it's taken a while, almost a year, to be okay with this perceived failure. Because in retrospect, I know that I made the right call. But as cliche as it sounds, this was a huge learning opportunity for me. I realized what I wanted and how to do it differently. And I realized that it was important to do it on my terms. So this knowledge and experience was only possible because I took the risk of putting myself out there to figure this out. And as they say, there's nothing that can replace actual lived experience. So you can hear about experimenting all day long, but you won't know what it feels like until you actually do it. Now, the third reason we avoid experimenting is because we have been under the illusion that there is one right way to do everything. And this includes art, business, or life. We reluctantly agree out of our need for safety and certainty. And I think that the general consensus is follow the true and tried method. Don't take too many risks. Look for the right answer. Be a good boy or girl. Be obedient. Don't get too weird. Don't be too confusing. Play it safe. I think you know what this sounds like and feels like. This is an unspoken social agreement that we all kind of follow along with. And even though we know deep inside, we have an inkling that is telling us that this is a bunch of BS, we still cling onto it. We know that nobody really knows what they're doing and that everyone is figuring things out as they go. But we insist on following the one true path towards seemingly guaranteed success. But like I said, at an intuitive level, we know that this goes against the nature of creativity and creative work in general. We know this because part of what makes us creative people in the first place is our curiosity, our deep desire for exploration, and to push beyond the obvious. We are hungry for more. We are in desperate need of a richer life. And by richer, I don't mean like more money. Of course, money matters, but I mean richer in the sense of experiences and just doing interesting things. And so this whole message of playing it safe doesn't really work for us. So, what is experimentation in creativity anyway? So, if you do a quick Google search, experimentation is the process of trying out new ideas, methods, or activities with the purpose of discovering something new or testing out an idea. So, in the context of our creativity, this means exploring different ways of being creative. This can include any of the following things: playing with different ways to achieve your desired result through your creative work, whether that's using a different medium or starting your work in an unconventional way, changing up aspects of your creative practice, like trying out different workflows or organizational methods, or alternating between different work environments so that you can avoid feeling bored and you can seek out new inspiration. After going over these things, you might still be wondering, why should I be experimenting with my creativity? The answer is simple. Experimenting is a learning opportunity, and the benefits are many. Experimenting help us with putting ideas into action so we can test them out. We can build experience. We can discover what works for us. We can develop a way of creating something that is aligned with who we are and the way that we like to do things. And most importantly, I think it really helps with our mindset, because whenever you go through fear, bringing in an experimental attitude to the work helps us to focus less on the fear of failure, and it invites a feeling of play and fun that allows us to discover new things about ourselves and our process. One last thing that I do want to say while we are here is that experimenting is fun and important in a big part of our creative process. And it's equally important to strike a balance and recognize when it's time to stop experimenting. I bet you didn't expect this one, but it's so important that we don't confuse experimenting for procrastination, because this can turn into a creative block very quickly if we leave it unchecked. At some point, you are going to need to commit to an idea to see it through and to take it to the next level, to be honest. And I know that we don't really like to hear this, but we have to try things, pick a direction, and stick with it for a while so that we can figure this out. What I was saying earlier about determining whether something works or it doesn't. And you do have to spend some time with it, but there needs to be a time limit to that, because you can spend years doing the same thing and not really seeing any results. So here are some things that you can look for to check and see if you are ready to move on from the experimentation phase. Things like noticing if you're getting bored with what you're doing. Notice if you're not gaining any traction with a particular project. If you're spending too many resources that outweigh the investment that you're making, it's time to reconsider whether that was resources in the form of time, energy, or your money. All these things count. Another example that comes to mind when I think about this in my journey has been my entrepreneurship journey in general. I have spent the last decade thinking about what I wanted to do with my creativity, because I have a lot of energy and there's a lot of different things that I like to do. And so I went from wanting to do freelance graphic design to doing hand lettering. And then I was like super hot on like greeting cards. And then I wanted to do illustration. And then I was like, no, but I want to, more specifically, I want to do patterns. And then finally, I was like, but my strengths really are more about coaching and guiding others. And so it really took a while for me to finally feel like I landed on something that really helped me to engage a lot of different parts of my creativity that aligned with my strengths as a coach. And yeah, just all those things. And also gaining the experience of what different things take is now something that I can use to help others. And so I share this because I think it's also really common to hear that things might take a few months, or like it's going to be fast, or we also buy into a lot of programs and like courses that promise that we're going to figure it out right away. And I can tell you, I spent so many years and a lot of money investing in a lot of different things that didn't really help. And I think a lot of it comes down to this idea of experimenting and not spending the time that I needed to figure these things out. This is what I was saying about we really have to pay attention to when we've been doing something and it's just not working. That was the case with entrepreneurship for me. So finally I was like, let's go with coaching and let's really see it through and put our effort into it. And by our, I mean me. Let me put all the effort in it and see what happens. And I'm seeing different things that are working for me. That's really good feedback. So I'm able to continue to move in this direction in a way that feels in a confident way. Let's recap. Today, we talked about obstacles that hold us back from experimenting with our creativity. I gave you a quick definition of what experimenting is and what it looks like in the context of creativity. And lastly, I shared many of the benefits of exercising an experimental approach and the things that you have to look out for when you have been experimenting for a long time. Remember, experimentation is about curiosity and play. It's how you grow. It's how you learn what works for you and your creative vision. And more importantly, it's how you find joy through your creative explorations. Now, I want to challenge you to experiment with one new thing this week. Tag me or DM me on Instagram and tell me about what you tried and how it felt. I would love to hear about it. And before you go, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or leave a review if you're listening to the podcast, because this helps other creative baddies to find the show and join our community. Thank you so much for listening to me today. And until we connect again, don't forget to try something new and keep creating. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.